Listeners, welcome to this small space where we share the concerns of your hearts. We begin now. Did you truly believe, dear listeners, that the faith in a husband whom you had loved deeply for 5 years, a man whose impeccable perfection you were proud of, could collapse in an instant over a single photograph? I didn't believe it. I thought my life was like a piece of classical music, with a sweet melody. Yet, it wasn't until the night of our fateful 5th wedding anniversary that I realized, in shock, that the music was actually a charade full of deceit, and I was the only actress who hadn't been given the script. That night, when I sent a single text message, I didn't know that within 10 minutes, not only my marriage but also the honor of 2 families would turn to ashes outside a hotel room door. The soft melody of a violin echoing through the Metropolitan Loft, a rooftop restaurant high above the skyscrapers of Midtown, did not reach my heart at all. In front of me, dinner for 2 was perfectly set. A vase of long-stemmed red roses, 2 wine glasses glistening in the candlelight, and a prime steak still steaming. Everything was perfect, except for the absence of one person. The man I had loved, dedicating 5 years of my youth to him, my husband Ethan, was not there. He had told me an urgent business trip to Miami had come up, an important contract that couldn't be postponed. He called me, his voice heavy with apologies and guilt, promising to make it up to me as soon as he returned. I told him with a smile, "Don't worry, your work comes first. I'll be fine alone." I trusted him. I always had, unconditionally. For the past 5 years, Ethan had been, in my eyes and everyone else's, the epitome of the ideal husband. He was not only competent and chivalrous but also a man who loved his wife devotedly. He had never disappointed me. He supported every one of my professional decisions and became a peaceful haven where I could unwind after a tough day at work. I considered myself the luckiest woman in the world. I slightly raised my wine glass, ready to take a solo sip to commemorate this special, albeit incomplete, day. Right at that moment, the cell phone resting on the table vibrated silently. It was a message from my one and only best friend, Sarah. I thought it would just be an anniversary greeting, so I opened it, but it was not. My heart sank like a stone. On the screen was no text, but a photograph, a very clear image. The background was the luxurious lobby of the Waldorf Astoria residences, one of the most expensive spots in the city. It was definitely not Miami. And the subject of the photo, a man with his back to the camera, was unmistakable by his height and build. The designer suit I had personally chosen for him last week was on my husband, Ethan, but he was not alone. His hand, the same one that had held mine whispering promises just this morning, was wrapped around the waist of another woman. A young, beautiful woman wearing an emerald silk dress I remembered seeing in a fashion magazine. They were standing very close, the woman's head resting gently on his shoulder. In Ethan's hand was a hotel key card, and she was smiling. A radiant, triumphant, and provocative smile. The world around me seemed to shatter. The sound of the violin, the laughter of the people, the clinking of glasses in the restaurant, it suddenly became distant, buzzing as if coming from another world. I couldn't hear anything anymore, only the sound of my heart breaking into 1,000 pieces. It was hard to breathe. I felt a sharp pain in my chest, as if someone was stabbing me with something sharp. A business trip to Miami. An important contract. It was all a brazen lie. He was right here in New York City, entering a 5-star hotel with another woman, and on our 5th wedding anniversary night, no less. The pain hit me like a tsunami, sweeping away all my rationality. Hot, bitter tears began to pour out. What had I done wrong? For the past 5 years, I had devoted myself body and soul to this marriage. I had even passed up a promotion to lead the San Francisco branch to spend more time with him, and I had trusted him blindly. And the reward was this cruel and devastating betrayal. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. I took a deep breath, trying to wipe away the tears blurring my vision. I zoomed in on the photo to look closely at the woman's face, and then an emotion even more terrible than the pain washed over me. I recognized her. I had seen her on the cover of a finance magazine. It was Brooke Ashford, the daughter-in-law of Eleanor Vance, the CEO of Vance Holdings. Yes, that Mrs. Vance, known in the business world as the Iron Lady, famous for her strictness and for valuing her family's honor above all else. Brooke had been married for 2 years to Mrs. Vance's only son, Julian. The news of their wedding had dominated the headlines at the time, and now she was here, in my husband's arms, a married woman having an affair with a married man. This was no longer just simple adultery, it was a bomb that could destroy the honor of 2 families. And at that exact instant, a cold, audacious idea crossed my mind. The pain inside me suddenly vanished, replaced by extreme fury and steely determination. Ethan, if you wanted to play big, I'll play with you too, but the loser will definitely not be me. My hands were no longer trembling, my fingers moved quickly across the screen. It wasn't hard to find Eleanor Vance's personal contact through my professional network. I took a deep breath, feeling my chest cool like ice. I opened the message window and wrote a brief, polite line, but enough to trigger an earthquake. Dear Mrs. Vance, good evening. I am Claire, Ethan's wife. May I ask if your daughter-in-law, Mrs. Brooke Ashford, is currently at the Waldorf Astoria Residences on business? I ask because my husband also told me he had an important meeting there in room 2109. I just wanted to be sure. Thank you. I reread the message. A bitter smile played on my lips. Room 2109. The number a private investigator I had secretly hired had sent me along with this photo just moments ago. There was no need to make a scene or burst onto the scene. For someone like Mrs. Vance, a small doubt, this tiny spark, was enough for her to burn down the entire forest herself. I hit the send button. The message was gone. Now all I had to do was sit here, finish my wine, and wait. I knew, knowing her character, that Mrs. Vance wouldn't call me to verify the facts. She would go there in person, and from her Upper East Side residence to the Waldorf Astoria Residences, it took exactly 10 minutes. 10 minutes for the best play to begin. 10 minutes that would end everything. Listeners, how will this drama unfold? What cruel truths await behind the curtain? If this story has touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and enable notifications so you don't miss the dramatic climax that is yet to come. Your subscription is great support for us to continue telling deeper and more meaningful stories. 10 minutes. Such a short time, yet it felt like a century to me. I remained motionless in the red velvet upholstered chair, the wine glass still in my hand. The flickering candlelight cast my shadow on the wall, behind a lonely, desolate shadow in the middle of this luxurious and romantic space. I no longer cried. The tears seemed to have dried, and a terrifying void took their place. In my mind, only images of the past swirled, fragments of sweet memories that until a few minutes ago I treasured like gold. Now, those memories resurfaced like a slow-motion film, and every frame was like a blade cutting deeper into my already shattered heart. How could I not have believed? How could I have been so blind? For the past 5 years, Ethan had built a perfect paradise without a single crack. A paradise I thought I would live in forever. I still vividly remember the day we met. It was at a mutual friend's birthday party. Back then, I was a recent graduate, a timid, awkward junior marketing associate. He, however, was already a VP of sales at a major corporation, mature, elegant, and irresistibly charming. He was the one who approached me first, telling me I had a captivating smile. Throughout that entire night, despite the many beautiful women around us, he only talked to me. He told me about his dreams and ambitions, the books he had read, the places he had traveled. He was intelligent, funny, and profound. For me, who only knew work, he was the first to make me feel how wide and interesting the outside world was. That night, he walked me home. Before saying goodbye, he didn't directly ask for my phone number, he simply smiled and said, "I hope I'll be lucky enough to see you again." That delicate, unhurried attitude completely captivated me, and he truly found a way to see me again. He found out where I worked, and every day sent me a bouquet of roses, my favorite flowers, without leaving a name. On the 7th day, he showed up with an even larger bouquet and a handwritten card. 7 days of courtship. Will you give me a chance? I couldn't refuse such a romantic and persistent man. Our love began naturally and passionately. Ethan was the perfect boyfriend. He always knew how to surprise me. sometimes with a romantic dinner cooked by him, other times with a weekend trip to a place I had mentioned in passing. He remembered all my preferences, my favorite food, the music I often listened to, even my habit of biting my nails when nervous. He always appeared when I needed him most. Once, I made a serious mistake at work, and my boss harshly reprimanded me. I was so frustrated I was about to quit. He was the one who stayed by my side all night, listening to my crying, helping me analyze every problem and find a solution. "Honey," he said, hugging me, "you are the strongest, most competent woman I know. You can't break down over a difficulty like this. Trust me, everything will be fine." And everything really turned out fine. His encouragement was like a magic potion that restored my confidence and courage. When he proposed to me, it was during a dinner at an exclusive restaurant overlooking the entire city. He had prepared everything: flowers, candles, and even a band playing my favorite music. He knelt, offered me a brilliant diamond ring, and said, "Claire, marry me. I can't promise you the richest life in the world, but I promise you the most tranquil and happy one. I will always be the man who supports and protects you." At that moment, I cried with happiness. I nodded, without hesitation for a second. I thought I had found the man of my life. Our marriage was even sweeter than our dating life. Ethan was not only my husband but also my friend and soulmate. We shared everything, from the small things of daily life to the big plans for the future. He was always proud of me. Every time I had a success at work, he was happier than anyone. He bragged to all his friends and colleagues about the competent wife he had. He never felt jealous or intimidated, even when my career took off and my income began to surpass his. He simply said, "With such an amazing wife, I'll have to work harder to keep up with you." It was precisely his support that made me work tirelessly. I wanted to be his pride, and I wanted to create a solid home so he could develop his career peacefully. 2 years ago, when I was offered the position of San Francisco branch director, an opportunity anyone in my field would dream of, I hesitated greatly. It meant we would have to have a long-distance relationship, or that he would have to quit his current job and follow me. I discussed it with him, and he said something that moved me deeply. "Claire, your career is important, but our family is more so. I don't want to be separated from you for a single day, but I also don't want to be a burden that prevents you from progressing. Do what you think is right. Whatever decision you make, I will always be by your side." In the end, I rejected the opportunity. I chose my family. I chose to be by his side every day. At that moment, I didn't regret it at all. I thought no career could compare to the happiness of home. Now, recalling it, I realize how stupid I was. Maybe that was what he wanted. He didn't want me to go too far, to escape his control. He needed me here in New York to keep playing the role of the perfect wife in his play. Even my mother-in-law, Carol, was an indispensable part of that perfect play. She was a retired teacher, kind and benevolent in appearance. From the first day I arrived at their house as a daughter-in-law, she treated me like her own daughter. She was never demanding or intrusive in our private matters. Every time Ethan and I had a small argument, she always mediated and took my side. "Ethan, a man must know how to yield to his wife. Your wife works hard all day. You have to take care of her a bit when she comes home," she often told him that. She also used to bring us nutritious food, insisting I take care of my health. I truly considered her my own mother and held her in all my respect and love. I thought I was very fortunate to have a wonderful husband and an attentive mother-in-law. A perfect home, a perfect love. Everything was too perfect. So perfect it seemed fake. The wine glass in my hand had cooled. I set it down on the table, and the glass hit the marble with a dry clack. That sound brought me back to the cruel reality. The paradise I had lived in for the past 5 years was nothing more than a golden cage built with lies. And I, a naive canary, had happily sung inside that cage without knowing anything. I looked again at the photo on the phone, seeing Ethan's smile, Brooke's smile. Suddenly I felt nauseous. All those sweet memories had turned bitter. Every promise, every gesture of love had become a clumsy performance. I thought that paradise would last forever. But I didn't know that right beneath my feet, hell had begun to show its first cracks a long time ago. Reviewing the last 6 months, I realized how clueless I had been. The signs of the cracks had clearly appeared, like wrinkles at the corner of the eye. But I tried hard to ignore them, rationalizing that married life can't always be a bed of roses. I had been deceiving myself, or, to be more precise, I had allowed the perfection created by Ethan to hide everything. The first crack began about 6 months ago, with his increasingly frequent and sudden business trips. Ethan was VP of sales, and travel was common, but before, he always warned me a week or even a month in advance. We packed together. I ironed each of his shirts and ran all sorts of errands for him. However, lately his trips had become more abrupt and secretive. "Honey, I have to go urgently to Boston tomorrow. An important partner just arrived from overseas." He usually told me late at night when I was already getting ready for bed. I barely had time to iron a couple of garments, and without being able to ask him anything else, he would leave the next day before dawn. These trips repeated with increasing frequency. Sometimes it was Boston, other times Miami, and even some small city I had never heard of. He said the company was expanding its market, and he had to make field visits, and I believed him. I only felt sorry for his effort and worried about his health without the slightest suspicion. Then the late-night meetings began. Before, no matter how busy he was, Ethan always tried to come home to have dinner with me, but gradually our dinners together became scarce. "You eat first. I have a meeting with the president tonight, and I'll be late." Those messages became routine. I sat alone at the table with the cold dinner, comforting myself with the idea that he was striving for his career, for our future together. Some nights, I fell asleep on the sofa waiting for him. He returned smelling of alcohol and an unfamiliar perfume. He vaguely explained that he had been entertaining clients and quickly went into the bathroom. I sometimes scolded him for drinking too much, telling him to think about his health. He simply smiled, hugged me, and said, "It's all for our family." Those words were like a sedative that calmed all my worries and anxieties. Again, I convinced myself that I should understand him, that I should be his unconditional support. The changes were not limited to work. Even in our most intimate moments, I could feel an invisible distance. The hugs were no longer so tight. The kisses became quick and dry. He often said he was tired, that the stress of work didn't let him think about anything else. I sincerely worried about him. I looked for the best nutritional supplements, cooked him restorative dishes, and even enrolled in a massage course to help him relax. I did everything I could as a wife to share his burden, but his response to my attention was an increasingly evident evasion. He started putting a password on his phone, something he had never done before. When I asked him, he simply smiled and said, "There are new company security regulations. Important data cannot be seen by anyone." He often went out onto the balcony to talk on the phone, whispering, and immediately hung up if he saw me approaching. These behaviors, although very subtle, were like a stone in my shoe. They didn't hurt, but they created constant discomfort. The peak of suspicion came about 2 months ago, on a Saturday afternoon. It was my birthday. Ethan told me he had a sudden meeting he couldn't miss but promised to return soon for dinner. Excited at home, I put on my prettiest dress and carefully did my makeup, expecting a romantic evening. But 7 o'clock came, then 8, then 9, and he didn't return. His phone was out of service. I started worrying that something had happened to him. Just then, the cleaning lady who helped us by the hour came to clean. While tidying the office, she accidentally knocked over a pile of papers on Ethan's desk. As she bent down to pick them up, a small pink receipt fell from between the books. She didn't mind, but I saw it. I picked it up and felt my heart stop. It was a payment receipt from a luxury jewelry store. The item was a diamond necklace valued at almost $250,000. The payment date was just yesterday. I was frozen, the receipt trembling uncontrollably in my hand. $250,000 was not a small amount, and tomorrow was my birthday. It was clear. It was a surprise gift he had prepared for me. He had lied about going to a meeting just to go pick it up. Guilt and happiness mixed inside me. I had misjudged him. I quickly put the receipt back in its place. I didn't want to spoil the surprise for him. I felt better and continued waiting. But 10 o'clock came, then 11, then midnight, and he didn't return. He came back almost at 1 in the morning, completely drunk and without any gift in his hands. He staggered into the bedroom, collapsed on the bed, and fell asleep. The next morning, upon waking, he hugged me and constantly apologized. He said the client from the night before had forced him to drink too much and he hadn't been able to refuse. He promised to make it up to me with another wonderful dinner. He didn't mention the necklace at all, and on my birthday, I received nothing more than a belated apology. Where had that necklace gone? That question haunted me for days. I searched everywhere in the house, in his office, but found no trace. I considered hundreds of hypotheses. Maybe he had returned it, or he had given it to someone else. No, it couldn't be. Ethan wasn't like that. I tried to dismiss those terrible thoughts. I tried to trust him, but the seed of doubt, once planted, germinates in silence. It takes root in the deepest part of the heart and waits for the day to grow like a poisonous weed. I lived the next 2 months in that agony. I became more sensitive, more observant. I started noticing his clumsy lies, the contradictions in his schedules, but every time I tried to confront him, seeing his warm smile and affectionate gaze, I couldn't do it. I was afraid that if I dug deeper, I would discover a truth I couldn't bear. I opted for silence, for believing in the false paradise he had painted. Until tonight, when that photo arrived, I realized how wrong I was. That necklace was probably on that woman's neck, on Brooke Ashford's, like a war trophy, like proof mocking my stupidity. Listeners, isn't it true that when we are in love, we often cover our eyes to the painful truth? If you have ever experienced the pain of betrayed trust, please hit like to send your empathy and comfort to our protagonist. Your support will be a great strength for her to become stronger on the path ahead. The $250,000 receipt was like a ghost haunting my mind, giving me no moment of peace. It turned my sleep into a nightmare. In my dreams, I saw Ethan putting that necklace on another woman. A woman with a blurry face I couldn't recognize. They laughed and talked cheerfully while I watched them from the darkness far away. I woke up with my back soaked in sweat. Beside me, Ethan was still sleeping soundly with regular breathing. Seeing his attractive face under the lamp's light, I wondered again, is this man really cheating on me? Or is this all because I am too sensitive and distrustful? I spent a week with a broken heart. I became taciturn, often lost in my thoughts. Every time Ethan showed interest and asked me what was wrong, I felt confused, not knowing whether to be happy or cautious. My change, of course, did not go unnoticed by my mother-in-law, Carol. One Saturday afternoon, she came home with a pot of homemade broth, saying it was for me to feel better. "You've looked terrible lately, Claire," she said, placing the pot on the table and looking at me with eyes full of concern. "Is something wrong? Tell me." Seeing the sincere worry in her eyes, I felt the defensive barrier I had built with so much effort instantly crumble. I was too tired to deal with this suspicion alone. I wanted to confide in someone, ask for advice, and I thought there was no one more suitable than my mother-in-law. She was Ethan's mother and knew him better than anyone. And besides, as a woman, she would understand my feelings. I pulled out a chair for her to sit down and hesitantly began to tell her the story of the receipt. I didn't express my suspicions directly. I only told her that I had seen it by chance, and that since my birthday had passed without any gift, I was a little curious. I tried to speak in the softest tone possible, as if it were a trivial question. My mother-in-law listened patiently, without interrupting me. There was no surprise on her face, only deep reflection. When I finished speaking, she didn't rush to give me advice. She simply sighed deeply and took my hand. "Dear, since you came into our house, you have suffered a lot." Her words surprised and moved me. It was the first time she acknowledged that I had suffered. "I know Ethan is a good boy and that he loves his wife, but men, dear, sometimes have ideas that we cannot understand. Maybe he didn't buy that necklace to give it to you directly." She spoke in a calm, measured voice. "Think about it. His job as VP of sales. He has to deal with all kinds of people. In big business relationships, people don't just give a bottle of wine or a box of cookies. Sometimes an expensive gift for a client's wife can bring a contract worth hundreds, thousands of times more. It's an investment, a way to network in the business world. If Ethan didn't tell you, it was probably so you wouldn't get strange ideas, for fear you wouldn't understand. Each of her words was like a stream of cool water, slowly extinguishing the flames of suspicion burning in my heart. It was true. Why hadn't I thought of that possibility? I also work in marketing. I know the importance of building relationships. A gift for a client's wife sounds a little strange, but in the complex world of business, anything can happen. Her explanation was perfectly reasonable. It resolved all the doubts in my mind. Seeing me relax, my mother-in-law continued in an even softer voice. I am not defending my son, but at my age, I am not wrong in judging people. Ethan truly loves you. The way he looks at you cannot be hidden. You are a good wife, smart, beautiful, and capable. He would have to be crazy to look for another woman. Don't ruin your marriage by suspecting nonsense. Men really don't like it when their wives distrust them, understood? Listen to me and pretend you don't know anything, and you'll see, when the time is right, he will either explain it himself or bring you an even more valuable gift. She even told me a story of her own. She said my father-in-law also had a time when he left early and returned late, and the money wasn't clear where it was going. She also suspected and suffered, but in the end, she chose to believe. Later, she found out her husband had been secretly saving to buy land and surprise her. Sometimes a woman's silence and trust are the most powerful weapons, dear, she concluded. Her story was like a powerful sedative that completely broke down all my defenses. I felt very ashamed. I had doubted a good husband like Ethan and almost ruined my happy marriage because of my suspicions. I had been very wrong. I looked at my mother-in-law and felt a gratitude that came from my heart. Mom, now I understand. Thank you. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't know what to do. She smiled kindly and stroked my head like a child. Silly girl, you are my daughter-in-law. If I don't take care of you, who will I take care of now? Stop thinking nonsense. Try the broth I brought you. I've been simmering it all morning. Take this and regain your strength to be the beautiful, cheerful girl you were before. Ethan will worry if he sees you like this when he comes back. I took a spoonful of the hot broth. The sweet, smooth flavor of the herbs and chicken spread through my mouth. My heart warmed up again. All doubts, all anxiety seemed to disappear. With such an attentive and understanding mother-in-law, what else could I worry about? I promised myself. From now on, I would never doubt Ethan again. I would trust him blindly and be the kindest and most understanding wife so he could focus on his career peacefully. Carol's performance completely convinced me, and I extinguished the last ember of caution myself. I didn't know that this sweet comfort was actually a poison, slowly infiltrating my mind, blinding me so that the fall, when the truth came out, would be even more painful. My mother-in-law's comfort was like a summer downpour that cleansed all the dark clouds from my heart. I felt light and peaceful. I reprimanded myself for being too sensitive and endangering my marriage over a simple receipt. I decided to forget the matter and return to being the cheerful wife who trusted her husband. I tidied the house, put out fresh flowers, and prepared a magnificent dinner with Ethan's favorite dishes. I wanted to make up for being cold to him the last few days, but perhaps once a person harbors a doubt, it's hard to trust fully again. Rationally, I was convinced by my mother-in-law's words, but in the deepest part of my subconscious, the image of the receipt and Ethan's absence on my birthday night remained like a small thorn that pricked me occasionally. That night, Ethan came home. Seeing my radiant appearance and the splendid table, he seemed very surprised. "Did something good happen today, honey?" he said sweetly, hugging me from behind. I turned around with a broad smile. "Nothing. I just felt I hadn't treated you well these last few days, and I wanted to make it up to you." We ate dinner amidst laughter and conversation, as we hadn't in a long time. But as the night progressed and we were alone in the bedroom, the little thorn in my heart began to grow again. I was in his arms, but I couldn't fall asleep. The question about the necklace spun in my head. Should I ask him? My mother-in-law had told me to keep silent, but I felt that if I didn't ask, I would never be at peace. Curiosity and the yearning to know the truth finally won. I moved slightly and raised my head to look at him. "Ethan, can I ask you something, but promise me you won't get angry?" He stroked my hair and said softly, "What is so serious? Ask." "When have I ever been angry with you?" I hesitated for a moment and then summoned up the courage. "On my birthday, I accidentally saw a jewelry purchase receipt on your office desk." As soon as I finished speaking, I felt his body tense slightly. Although it was a very subtle reaction, in the silence of the night, I clearly noticed it, but he hid his emotion very quickly. He let out a forced laugh, a laugh with a touch of nervousness. "Ah, you saw it. I hid it so well. You really don't miss a thing," he said with a playful tone of reproach. "Then, did you really buy it for me?" I asked. Hope filled my heart. "And who else would it be for, you silly thing?" He gently pinched my nose. "But why didn't you give it to me that day?" He sighed and put on a sad expression. "I wanted to give you a big surprise. I had planned to take you to a special place after a romantic dinner to give you the gift. But suddenly the meeting came up, and the client held me back and made me drink until I passed out. When I got home, you were already asleep." He paused. "The next day, when I woke up, I saw you weren't in a good mood, and I felt so guilty that I thought this gift no longer made sense. I was going to find another good occasion to give it to you, but you beat me to it. You ruined the surprise." His explanation truly sounded reasonable, and all the details fit perfectly. He even expressed disappointment and guilt on his face. I started to think I had been wrong. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I shouldn't have doubted you." "It's okay." He hugged me tighter. "It's my fault for not being by your side on your birthday, but you disappointed me too. Why don't you trust me? In the last 5 years, have I done something to make you doubt?" His question was like a knife driven into the wound. It was true. In the last 5 years, he had never failed me, and I had doubted him. I was very wrong. I made a mistake. "Don't be angry anymore, okay?" I said, cooing, rubbing my head against his chest. "It won't happen again." "I'm not angry," he said in a cheerier voice. "But since you ruined the surprise for me, now you'll have a punishment." He started tickling me, and I couldn't stop laughing. The room was filled with laughter again. All doubts, all tension seemed to dissipate. I completely fell for his performance, for his perfect explanation. The next morning, when I woke up, Ethan had already left for work. On my pillow was a dark blue velvet box. I opened the box excitedly, and inside was a brilliant diamond necklace. It was that one. Next to it, a handwritten note said, "For my precious and distrustful wife, I love you." I put on the necklace and smiled happily. I felt like a fool. I almost lost my happiness because of my own imaginings. I promised myself this would be the last time. From now on, I would never again let stupid doubts affect our love. I didn't know that necklace, that surprise gift, was just a prop in his play. He hadn't prepared it to give to me, but to handle the situation in case I found out. He had anticipated everything. He had calculated every step. My interrogation, far from unmasking him, only served to further consolidate my trust and give him the opportunity to deepen his role as the perfect husband. I lost. I lost disastrously in the game I tried to turn around, and that magnificent deception left me completely disarmed. So when the truth, even more cruel, was revealed later, I had no strength left to resist. I walked further into the trap he had so carefully laid, a sweet but deadly trap. After the failed interrogation and Ethan's surprise gift, I completely dismissed all my doubts. Our life returned to its sweet course, even with more passion than before. Ethan seemed to feel guilty for missing my birthday. He spent more time with me, often taking me out to dinner or the movies. He voluntarily reduced his social commitments and came home earlier. I, immersed in happiness, believed that this small storm had strengthened our love even more. I bragged to Sarah about my attentive husband and the brilliant diamond necklace I wore around my neck. She only smiled a somewhat forced smile, but at the time, I didn't notice. "If you are happy, that's what matters." That was all she said. I was too blind with love to notice anything strange in my friend's attitude. I rebuilt a perfect wall around my marriage, not allowing any truth to enter. But the truth will out. The truth, no matter how much it is hidden, always finds a way to come to light. And usually, at the moment we least expect it. About a month later, my company organized a major event for a new product launch. As VP of Marketing, I was in charge. The event was a huge success, attracting the attention of many media and partners. Afterward, we held a party at a luxury hotel. Everyone was happily toasting. While chatting with some colleagues, I accidentally overheard the conversation of a newly arrived intern. The intern was excitedly bragging to people about a fashion influencer she admired very much. "Do you know Brooke Ashford? She is gorgeous, super smart, and has incredible style." The name Brooke Ashford made me pause. It rang a bell. "Isn't she the daughter-in-law of Vance Holdings?" another person asked. "Yes, that's the one," the intern exclaimed. "She got married last year. Her husband is a handsome, rich heir. A dream life, seriously. I follow her Instagram every day. She always uploads photos of luxury trips and only wears high-end brands." Out of curiosity, I took out my phone and searched for Brooke Ashford on Instagram, finding her personal profile with hundreds of thousands of followers. The profile photo was the same one I had seen on the magazine cover, a beautiful and haughty woman. I glanced at her posts. Just as the intern said, Brooke's life was full of glamour, trips to Europe, limited edition bags, luxury parties. I was only taking a look without any other intention, but then my gaze stopped at a photo posted about 2 months ago. It was a selfie. Brooke was sitting in a luxury restaurant with the city lights shining in the background. She wore an attractive off-the-shoulder dress and voluminous waves in her hair. Her makeup was perfect, and she smiled radiantly. But it wasn't her beauty that froze me. It was the brilliant diamond necklace she wore around her neck. I felt as if an invisible hand was squeezing my heart. I zoomed in on the photo and stared intently at the necklace pendant. There was no doubt. Every one of the small, precisely set diamonds, the delicate lines, it was exactly the same necklace Ethan had given me, the one I was wearing at that very moment. Unconsciously, I touched the necklace hanging from my neck. A chill ran down my spine. How was it possible? Why did she have a necklace identical to mine? With trembling hands, I clicked on the photo's publication date, October 25th, my birthday. The day Ethan told me he had a sudden meeting. The day I found the receipt. I felt dizzy. All the loose pieces suddenly fit together to form a complete picture, a cruel and relentless picture. The night of my birthday, Ethan did not go to any meeting. He was at this luxury restaurant with Brooke. The necklace he bought was not for me. It was originally for her. His explanation, his repentant performance, it was all a lie fabricated after he realized I had found the receipt. This necklace I am wearing now is probably an identical replica he bought in a hurry to silence me and cover everything up. I felt tightness in my chest and a dry throat. I quickly got up and rushed to the bathroom. I splashed cold water on my face, trying to calm myself, but the image of the necklace on Brooke's neck kept tormenting me. I looked at myself in the mirror. The woman I saw looked truly pathetic, pale face, eyes wide with terror. I also wore a diamond necklace around my neck, but it was no longer a symbol of love. It was like a shackle, proof of my own stupidity. I started laughing. A bitter, deranged laugh. In the end, I was just a substitute, a replacement. He had bought my silence with a fake gift so he could continue his affair. I had been completely fooled. I returned to the party, trying to act normal, but my mind was no longer there. I couldn't stop thinking about Brooke and Ethan and their relationship. Why Brooke? A woman who had everything. Fame, money, a millionaire husband. Why did she have to be the other woman? And Ethan, what did he gain from this relationship? Daring to have an affair with the daughter-in-law of someone as powerful as Mrs. Vance. Didn't he fear the consequences? 1,000 questions arose in my head, and I knew this time I couldn't remain silent. I couldn't continue to deceive myself. I had to uncover the truth. I had to find out at any cost what was happening behind my back. The sweet play was about to end, and this time I would not be a simple, naive spectator. I would be the one to tear down the false velvet curtain myself. Has a coincidence ever appeared in your life so suspicious that it gave you goosebumps? Share this story with your most trusted friend and confirm together that sometimes a woman's intuition is never wrong. The euphoria of alcohol and professional success quickly dissipated, leaving only the bitter taste of cruel truth. I walked home like a sleepwalker. This luxurious apartment, which was once cozy and warm, now seemed like a huge stage decorated with falsehoods. Ethan had not returned yet, and I had no desire to wait for him. I went straight to the bedroom, took the necklace off my neck, and threw it into a corner of the jewelry box. I didn't want to see it again. Every time I saw it, I felt humiliation. I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling with my eyes wide open. Sleep had completely abandoned me. In my head, only images of Ethan and Brooke spun, the identical necklaces, and the face of my mother-in-law, Carol, with her kind smile and sweet words of comfort. "Mom is not wrong in judging people. Ethan truly loves you." Her words echoed in my ears. Did he really love me? Would a man who truly loves his wife buy the same gift for another woman? Would a man who truly loves his wife lie so skillfully? Or was my mother-in-law also lying? A terrible thought crossed my mind. No, it couldn't be. Although she was Ethan's mother, she had always treated me well and taken my side. She had no reason to deceive me. Maybe she didn't know anything either, and like me, was being fooled by Ethan. I tried to cling to that thought like a shipwrecked person to a piece of rotten wood. I wanted to believe that I was not completely alone in this fight. I didn't want to believe that all the people I loved and trusted had turned their backs on me. But the truth is often crueler than we can imagine, and it arrived 2 days after that fateful night, on a Monday afternoon. That day, I took the afternoon off, with the excuse that I wasn't feeling well. I wanted to be alone in the tranquility of my home to sort out my confused thoughts. Around 3 in the afternoon, while I was trying to read a book on the balcony without being able to concentrate, the doorbell rang. I looked through the intercom, and it was my mother-in-law. She had come unannounced. A whirlwind of emotions overcame me. On one hand, I wanted to see her, confide, and ask for advice, but on the other, I was afraid to face her, afraid that if I told her the truth about the second necklace, she wouldn't believe me, or worse, that she would try to protect her son again. I took a deep breath and, feigning normality, opened the door. "Mom, what are you doing here without calling? I was coming from the doctor and remembered you, so I stopped by to see you," she said, smiling with a bag of oranges in her hand. "Ethan told me you weren't feeling well. Are you sick? Shouldn't you go to the doctor?" Her concern comforted me a little. Maybe I was being too paranoid. "I'm fine, Mom, just a little tired from work. Come in, come in." I invited her in and prepared her a cup of hot tea. We sat in the living room chatting. She asked me about my work, about my parents' health. She was still the attentive and detailed mother-in-law she always was. I was about to bring up the subject of Brooke, but I stopped myself. I didn't want to worry her or shatter the image of the perfect son she had in her eyes. Just then, Carol's phone rang. She looked at the screen and smiled at me. "It must be Ethan. He's probably calling to check on you," she answered the phone with a voice full of love. "Hello, son. It's Mom." After exchanging a few words, she suddenly got up and went to the balcony. I assumed it was so as not to bother me. "I'm going to talk somewhere quieter," she said. The glass door to the balcony was not completely closed, but slightly ajar. I was sitting in the living room, but I could vaguely hear her conversation. At first, I didn't intend to listen, but a few words from her caught my attention. "I think she's been suspicious again lately." "Yes, she's been in a bad mood for a few days." "Don't worry, Mom can handle this. You focus on your work." "Yes, be careful with that, Brooke. Her family is not just anybody, so be careful not to get caught in anything." "Yes, understood." "I'll try to talk to her. Claire trusts me completely. She believes anything I tell her. I have to go, I'm at her house. If I talk too much, she'll get suspicious." Each of her words was like a hammer blow to my head. My ears were ringing, and I felt my blood run cold. I remained motionless in the chair, unable to believe what I had just heard. Claire trusts me completely. She believes anything I tell her. So that was it. That was it. Her concern, her comfort, it was all an act. An act to calm me down and cover up her son's sins. She not only knew about Ethan and Brooke's affair, but she was his accomplice, his helper in the cover-up. This shock was 1,000 times greater and more painful than when I discovered Ethan had another woman. The person I respected like my own mother, whom I trusted with all my heart, was the one stabbing me in the back. I felt nauseous. The love, the family affection, everything I believed in was a farce. I was living in a den of wolves, amidst a family of professional scammers. Together, they had woven a perfect net, and I was the stupid prey who had fallen into it on my own accord. My mother-in-law finished the call and walked back in with a kind smile. "Ethan is very worried about you. He told me to stay for dinner and keep you company." She continued speaking in a sweet voice, as if nothing had happened. I raised my head and looked at her. In my eyes there was no longer respect or love, only a terrifying coldness. Without saying a word, I silently stood up and headed for the door. "Where are you going, Claire?" she asked, a little surprised. "I'm going out for a moment," I replied with a dry voice. I couldn't stay in that house for a second longer. I couldn't breathe the same air as this hypocritical woman. I had to leave. I had to leave to recover and prepare for war, a war I couldn't afford to lose. I rushed out of the apartment like a fugitive. I didn't know where I was going. I only knew I had to escape from there, from that suffocating space full of lies and betrayal. I drove aimlessly through the busy streets of New York. Tears returned, but this time they weren't of pain, but of rage and resentment. I had been deceived. I had been deceived by both of them, mother and son. They had treated me like a fool, like a puppet they could manipulate at will. Their performance was so perfect, so elaborate. They had taken advantage of my love and my trust to turn me into a tool for their dirty purposes. I thought I was strong and intelligent, but against their cunning, I was nothing more than a naive child. I parked at a roadside coffee shop and sat alone at a secluded table. I had to calm down. I had to think. Crying and suffering now wouldn't solve anything. I had cried enough. Now was the time to act. My mistake had been staying silent, trying to believe blindly. My mistake had been thinking I could face this alone and discover the truth. Now I realized I couldn't be alone in this war. I was facing not just an unfaithful husband, but an entire family of scammers. They were in cahoots. They had a plan, and they wouldn't hesitate to use any means to protect their interests. I needed allies. I needed exhaustive preparation. I had to go from being the prey to being the hunter. The first person who came to mind was my best friend, Sarah. It was she who had sent me that fateful photo. Maybe she had already known something before, but hadn't dared to tell me directly. I dialed Sarah's number. On the other side, she answered almost instantly, as if she had been waiting for this call for a long time. "Claire, are you okay?" Her voice was full of concern. "No, Sarah, I'm not okay at all. Can you come? I need you." Half an hour later, Sarah arrived. Seeing my pitiful state, she hugged me tightly without saying a word. Her hug was incredibly warm, like firm support when I was about to collapse. I told her everything, from the necklace, through my mother-in-law's comfort, to the call I had just overheard. Sarah listened patiently, and in her eyes were rage and resentment. "I suspected it for a long time, Claire," Sarah said when I finished telling her everything. "Your husband, Ethan, is not as simple as you think. I've seen him several times with that Brooke, in very discreet places. I wanted to tell you, but I was afraid you wouldn't believe me, that I would break up your family. I had hired a private investigator to follow him for a week. The photo the other day is just a small part." Sarah opened her phone and showed me other photos. Ethan and Brooke entering a hotel hand in hand, kissing and hugging in a car. Each photo was like a knife plunging deeper into my heart. "And your mother-in-law, too," Sarah continued. "She also seemed a little strange to me, too good, too attentive to be a real mother-in-law. I suspected she was acting. And now it's all clear. They are accomplices. So what do I do now?" I asked helplessly. "Divorce him." "Of course, you have to divorce him," Sarah said firmly. "But not just any divorce. You sacrificed yourself for 5 years. You can't leave empty-handed. They have to pay for it, for the lies, for the betrayal, and for your tears." "But how?" "I don't have more proof than these few photos." "Of course you do," Sarah scoffed. "You forgot who you are. You are a VP of marketing. You have brains, you have contacts, and most importantly, you have me by your side." Sarah squeezed my hand hard, cheering me on. Listen closely, Claire. From now on, you have to turn pain into reason. You have to become colder and more calculating than they are. They cannot know that you've discovered everything. You have to continue playing the role of the naive, hurt wife. The more pitiful you look, the better. Why? I didn't understand. So they let their guard down, Sarah explained. Meanwhile, we will secretly gather evidence. Evidence of Ethan's infidelity, evidence of your mother-in-law's complicity, and perhaps even financial evidence. I don't think someone like Ethan is completely clean in his work. We are going to uncover everything. When we have enough evidence in hand, we will deliver a lethal blow before they have time to react. Sarah's plan sounded audacious but very reasonable. It was true. I couldn't keep acting like a fool. I needed a plan, a clear strategy. In this war, I didn't just want a divorce, I wanted justice, but I need a good lawyer, I said. Don't worry, Sarah smiled. I have a cousin, Attorney Thompson, who specializes in complicated divorce cases. He's very good and very discreet. I'll set up an appointment for you tomorrow. What you have to do now, Sarah said, looking me directly in the eyes, is wipe your tears, go home, and start the performance of your life. You have to act very well, Claire. Act until the velvet curtain of this play comes down your way. Sarah's words were like a ray of light, illuminating the dark path ahead. I no longer felt powerless or alone. I had my friend by my side and a clear plan. The pain still burned faintly in my chest, but it no longer knocked me down. It had turned into a flame of rage and determination. I would act, perfectly playing the role of the deceived wife until the end, and I would wait. I would wait for the day when I could write the ending of this tragic play myself. Returning home, I was a different person. I still had a sad expression, with my eyes still red, but deep inside me, the Claire vulnerable and weak to love was dead. In her place, a cold, calculating, and determined Claire had been born. When I returned, my mother-in-law rushed to ask how I was, perfectly playing her role as the worried mother. Claire, where have you been? You weren't answering your phone. Mom was so worried. Is something wrong? You look awful. I leaned my head on her shoulder and pretended to sob. Mom, I don't know what to do. I feel terrible. I started my performance. I cried to her about the stress of work, about the loneliness I felt when Ethan went away on trips so often. I forced myself to seem weak, vulnerable, and in need of support. My mother-in-law, as expected, completely swallowed my performance. She hugged me, comforted me, and reassured me. There. Don't cry anymore, child. Mom is here. Everything will be fine. I will talk to Ethan, so he spends more time with you. That night, when Ethan returned, Carol called him into a separate room, and they talked for quite a while. I don't know what they talked about, but afterward, Ethan's attitude completely changed. He became more affectionate, more attentive. He voluntarily canceled all his dinner appointments and stayed home with me. He even proposed, "How about we go on a trip this weekend, honey? It's been a long time since we spent time alone." Everything was going according to Sarah's and my plan. The more attention and affection they showed me, the more they let their guard down. They thought I was still the docile lamb who was swayed by sweet words. They didn't know that this lamb was shedding its skin and silently sharpening its horns. While they devoted themselves to their performance, Sarah and I began to act. The next day, I met with Attorney Thompson. He was a middle-aged gentleman with a penetrating gaze. After listening to my whole story, he didn't offer any words of comfort. He only asked me one thing. "What do you want to achieve with this divorce?" "Justice," I replied firmly. "I want him to leave empty-handed, and I want everyone to know the true face of him and his mother." "Understood," Attorney Thompson nodded. "Then we have to gather evidence. Lots of evidence, not just proof of infidelity, but also financial evidence." "Do you suspect anything in your husband's business dealings?" I told him about Ethan's strange behaviors, his secret phone calls, his suspicious knowledge of financial matters. Attorney Thompson nodded. "It is very likely that he not only cheated on you emotionally, but also with your money. Let's start there." Following Attorney Thompson's instructions, I began my own investigation. I took advantage of the trust Ethan was trying to rebuild to subtly ask him about his work. I feigned interest in his projects and asked him to explain contracts and partners to me. When he wasn't around, I secretly copied all the important documents from his computer. The deeper I dug, the more suspicious things I found. Contracts with ambiguous clauses, partners about whom there was barely any information online. There seemed to be an illegal movement of funds. At the same time, Sarah did not rest. She combined her contacts with the information obtained from the detective to investigate Brooke, and what she discovered truly stunned us. Brooke Ashford, the daughter-in-law of Vance Holdings, was actually a piece in a much larger game. Her marriage to the heir was only a marriage of convenience for business reasons. Her husband was a dissolute playboy who had no interest in his wife. Brooke's affair with Ethan was not only for emotional reasons, but had another purpose. Ethan had promised to help her divert part of her in-laws' fortune through a phantom investment project. They were a pair of scammers who used each other for profit, and I, and Brooke's husband, Julian, were just victims a shield to cover up their conspiracy. This truth infuriated me, but at the same time, it left me perplexed. I was not the only victim in this play. I decided to play an even bolder card. I had to make Ethan and Brooke betray themselves. I told Ethan that the following week, I had to go on a business trip to San Francisco for a week. It was the perfect opportunity I had created myself. I was sure that as soon as I left, he wouldn't miss the chance to be with his mistress. "Are you going alone?" Ethan asked, concealing the joy in his gaze. "No, I'm going with some colleagues. Take good care of yourself while I'm gone." I smiled, perfectly playing the role of the attentive wife. "Don't worry, have a good trip. I'll take good care of the house." He hugged me, a hug full of hypocrisy. The day I was supposed to leave for San Francisco, I didn't go to the airport. I went to a hotel near home and booked a room with a good view. Sarah and the detective team were ready. As expected, just a few hours after my departure, Ethan's car stopped in front of the main entrance of the Waldorf Astoria residences. He and Brooke entered hand in hand once again, but this time they didn't know that every one of their movements was being meticulously recorded by dozens of hidden lenses. The net was cast, and the prey had walked into it themselves. Sitting in the hotel room, watching the images transmitted in real time on my laptop, I felt strangely calm. My play was about to end, and this time I was not only an actress, but also the director, the person who would decide the ending of all the characters in this drama. If you are eagerly awaiting the protagonist's exciting twist, subscribe to the channel right now. The journey to regain justice has just begun, and the most tense parts are yet to come. Don't miss a single moment. The hotel room I was staying in instantly became a small command center. The large laptop screen continuously transmitted the images from the hidden cameras with sharpness that missed no detail. I could see Ethan and Brooke sitting in the hotel's luxurious restaurant, laughing and chatting happily while toasting with wine. I could see the gallant Ethan pulling out Brooke's chair, looking at her with an expression full of affection. If I had been the me of a month ago, these scenes probably would have killed me with pain, but now they only deepened my contempt. Beside me, Sarah attentively watched another screen showing the data from the tracking device the detective had placed in Ethan's car. She constantly took notes of locations and times. "They didn't just go to the hotel, Claire," Sarah said without taking her eyes off the screen. "Before, Ethan picked up Brooke, and they went to a law firm in the Upper East Side. They were there for over an hour." A law firm. What were they doing there? A bad feeling ran through me. "I sent someone to investigate," Sarah continued. "It's a firm specializing in commercial law and mergers and acquisitions. I don't think they are just having a date. They must be plotting some big business deal." A business deal? I remembered what Sarah had investigated about Brooke. Ethan had promised to help her divert her in-laws' fortune. Could it be that my business trip was the opportunity to accelerate their plan? They think that since I'm in San Francisco, I won't find out anything. They are carrying out their conspiracy openly. Their audacity angered me, but at the same time I felt fortunate. The more openly they moved, the more traces they would leave. "Keep watching," I told Sarah with a cold voice. "Record everything without missing anything." That night, Ethan and Brooke stayed at the hotel. Their intimate moments in the elevator, in the hallway, everything was recorded. Sarah and I stayed up all night, taking turns to monitor and back up the data. Seeing the man who was once my husband making love to another woman, my heart no longer hurt. Only a void remained, an insensitivity. He had become a complete stranger. The next morning, they left the hotel looking very cheerful and satisfied. Ethan dropped Brooke off at her luxurious apartment and then drove to his office. It seemed like everything was over. "Isn't that enough already?" Sarah asked me. She looked tired. "Not yet." I shook my head. "Proof of infidelity is only one part. I want more. I want to know what financial conspiracy they are plotting. That will be the fatal blow." I knew that the ambiguous contracts I had copied were not enough to blame Ethan. I needed clearer evidence, irrefutable proof, and I decided to create that proof myself. I told Sarah my plan. Hearing it, her eyes widened in astonishment. "Claire, are you crazy? It's too risky. What if they catch you?" "There's no other way, Sarah," I said firmly. "This is the only opportunity. I have to do it." My plan was very simple, but at the same time extremely dangerous. That night, I would sneak into Ethan's office at the company and install a miniature recording device. I knew the building's access code. I knew the location of the security cameras. I had been in his office hundreds of times. I knew every corner. That night, I dressed in black with a cap and mask. I looked like a thief. Sarah watched from the car, keeping in touch with me through a miniature earpiece. Entering the empty office building, my heart pounded heavily. Fortunately, everything went well. I disabled the hallway cameras and infiltrated Ethan's office. The office was dark. Only the light from the buildings across the street filtered in. The smell of his cologne still faintly floated in the air, a fragrance I once loved, but which now only provoked nausea. I quickly went to his desk and placed the recording device in a discreet location under the table. Just as I was about to leave, I accidentally saw a document file on the desk. He had probably forgotten to put it away in the filing cabinet. Out of curiosity, I turned on my phone's flashlight and illuminated it. The letters on the document cover froze me. Real estate investment project, Vance Holdings, stock transfer proposal, Vance Holdings, Brooks In-Laws Group. With trembling hands, I opened the file. Inside was an elaborate and complex plan to establish a subsidiary company and transfer a significant portion of the stock from Brooke's husband's company to a new company owned by Ethan and Brooke through complex purchase and sale transactions. This was it. This was their conspiracy. They were preparing the asset diversion from Vance Holdings, and seeing the plan schedule, everything was accelerating to coincide with my business trip. I quickly photographed all the important pages of the document with my phone. Just then I heard footsteps outside the hallway. My heart was about to burst. Sarah also shouted through the earpiece, "Someone's coming. Hide quickly." I quickly turned off the flashlight and hid behind a large filing cabinet. The office door opened, and the hallway light flooded the room. I saw a man's shadow. It was Ethan. Why had he returned to the office at this hour? I held my breath, motionless. He entered and turned on the light. He seemed to be looking for something. He went straight to the desk and picked up the file I had just seen. I screamed internally, "It's over. He's going to notice the file has been moved." But no, he just glanced at it and put it in his briefcase. He had probably returned for it. He turned off the light and left the office. I waited for his footsteps to fade away so I could breathe again. I had saved myself by a hair's breadth. I left the building trembling and returned to the car where Sarah was. She hugged me tightly. "You almost gave me a heart attack." "I got something more important than the recorders, Sarah," I said, still trembling. I showed her the photos I had just taken. Sarah saw the plan, and her face changed color. My God, these people were going all out. This is no longer just an infidelity issue, it's organized fraud and asset embezzlement. With this evidence, Ethan won't just divorce empty-handed, he'll rot in jail. I looked at the phone screen, their elaborate and cruel plan. I didn't know that such a big fish would fall into my net. Now I not only had the evidence to end my marriage, but also a bomb that could completely destroy the career and future of Ethan and Brooke. I smiled, a cold smile. On this chessboard, victory was assured. After a week of my supposed business trip to San Francisco, I returned. Ethan came to pick me up at the airport with a bouquet of my favorite flowers, white lilies. He hugged me tightly, perfectly playing the role of the husband who missed his wife. "You're finally back. I missed you." Seeing his smile and affectionate gaze, I only felt infinite disgust. I replied with the smile I had rehearsed countless times in front of the mirror. "I missed you too." Our play continued, but this time I knew the end was near. I feigned tiredness from the trip and said I needed a few days to rest. During that time, Attorney Thompson and I finalized all the last procedures, but do our to pape. All the evidence I had gathered, the photos of the infidelity, the audio files, and the plan for asset embezzlement from Vance Holdings were organized into a perfect file. Attorney Thompson said, "With this evidence, we will not only win the divorce trial, but we can also file a criminal complaint. He will have no escape." I knew it was time to bring down the curtain, but I didn't want a simple ending. I wanted a memorable play with all the main actors present. And I chose the stage for my last performance, the same night it all began, the night of our 5th wedding anniversary. I returned to the present, sitting in the Metropolitan Loft restaurant. 10 minutes have passed since I sent the message to Mrs. Vance. The 10 longest minutes of my life. I have done my part. Now I am just a spectator waiting to see how the play I directed myself unfolds. I signaled the waiter for the check. I no longer felt like sitting there. I wanted to go somewhere closer, a place from where I could witness the impending storm. I drove to a small coffee shop across from the Waldorf Astoria residences. I chose a seat on the second-floor balcony. From here, I could see the entire hotel lobby. I ordered a hot ginger infusion, trying to warm my icy hands. My heart pounded hard. I felt a mix of nervousness and a little fear. What if Mrs. Vance didn't come? What if my plan failed? But then I saw it. A familiar black Rolls-Royce slowly entered the hotel entrance. The car door opened, and a woman in a dark red velvet suit, radiating power and distinction, stepped out. It was Eleanor Vance. She was not alone. Behind her, 2 men in black suits followed her bodyguards, and another car arrived. From the car stepped a middle-aged man with a kind face and a woman with a gentle appearance. I recognized them. They were the Ashfords, Brooke's parents, and with them came none other than Brooke's husband, Mrs. Vance's only son, Julian. He looked bewildered and confused. Mrs. Vance had not come alone. She had called her in-laws. She wanted to catch them in the act. She wanted everyone to witness this humiliation, a style very characteristic of the Iron Lady. I took a sip of my infusion and smiled slightly. The play had become more exciting than I had imagined. I saw Mrs. Vance say something to an employee in the lobby, and her group headed directly to the elevators. They had gotten the room number, 2109. My heart began to beat faster. That's it. The bomb is about to explode. I couldn't stay seated. I quickly paid. I went downstairs and looked for a discreet spot in the hotel lobby from where I could hear and see everything. I wanted to witness their downfall with my own eyes. I hid behind a large column and held my breath, waiting. About 5 minutes later, I heard a commotion coming from the elevators. Mrs. Vance's group emerged, and they all had murderous expressions. They headed directly to the end of the hallway where room 2109 was located. Mrs. Vance did not knock on the door. She signaled one of her bodyguards. He opened the lock with a master key. The room door burst open, and I heard Brooke's sharp scream, followed by Mrs. Vance's furious cry. "Shameless hussy! How dare you taint our family name?" A dry sound was heard smack, probably a slap, and then the sound of furniture breaking, Brooke's sobs and pleas, her husband's roar. "Ethan, you bastard, how dare you seduce my wife?" Everything turned into chaos. Guests in the adjacent rooms began to slightly open their doors to gossip. Some hotel security guards rushed over, but seeing Mrs. Vance's presence, no one dared to intervene. I watched silently from a distance. I felt no satisfaction, only a strange emptiness. This was the ending they deserved. But seeing the chaos, I suddenly felt tired. I turned to leave, but then I heard Ethan's voice, a voice full of fear and cowardice. "It's not my fault. It was her. She seduced me. I'm just a victim." Those words lit the last spark inside me. A victim. He dares to call himself a victim? No, I can't leave. This play cannot end without my character appearing. I took a deep breath. I stepped out of my hiding place and walked directly toward room 2109, where the gates of hell were opening. I walked down the red-carpeted hotel hallway. Each step was firm and determined. The sound of my heels against the floor echoed, clack, clack, as if the hammer of fate was striking the gates of their hell. All eyes were on room 2109, from which screams, insults, and tears constantly erupted. No one noticed my arrival. I passed through the curious crowd, among the bewildered security guards, and walked calmly. I stopped right at the threshold, where all the tragedy was unfolding in its crudest form. The scene inside was much more chaotic than I had imagined. Brooke, the haughty woman I had seen on Instagram, now had messy hair. Her expensive silk dress was wrinkled, and on one of her cheeks was a clear red five-finger mark. She was kneeling at Mrs. Vance's feet, crying and begging. "Mother, Mother, forgive me. I've done wrong. I know I've done wrong." Mrs. Vance stood like an ice statue, no emotion on her face, but her eyes burned with the flames of fury. Brooke's parents were in a corner with faces as pale as wax, not daring to lift their heads out of shame. Brooke's husband, Julian, had Ethan grabbed by the neck and was pushing him against the wall. His face was red with anger. "Bastard, I considered you a brother, and you dare to stab me in the back." My perfect husband, Ethan, now looked truly pathetic. His elegant suit was wrinkled, his tie askew, and his face was white with terror. He didn't dare resist, he just stammered. "Julian, it's a misunderstanding. She really seduced me. I'm a victim." His cowardly words again resonated clearly and shamelessly. It was then that I opened my mouth. My voice was not loud, but it was clear enough to silence all the chaotic sounds in the room. "A victim, Ethan. Are you really sure you're a victim?" Everyone in the room turned to look at me in unison. My sudden appearance surprised everyone. Ethan saw me and his eyes widened. The terror in them was much greater than when Julian had him grabbed by the neck. "You never imagined I would be here, did you?" he stammered. "Claire, what are you doing here?" Mrs. Vance also saw me, and her sharp gaze narrowed to examine me. She was probably wondering who I was and why I had appeared at this moment. "It doesn't matter who I am," I said. My gaze went directly to Mrs. Vance and then returned to Ethan. "The important thing is that I don't believe Ethan is a victim, because a victim wouldn't have time to concoct a meticulous plan to divert the wealth of two families." My words were like a second bomb exploding in the middle of the room. "What are you talking about?" Julian asked, releasing Ethan and addressing me. "A plan to divert assets?" "Yes, that's right," I replied calmly. I walked into the room and approached a small table where Ethan's briefcase was carelessly thrown. I opened the briefcase and pulled out a file, the same file I had photographed in his office. I put it on the table for everyone to see. "This is a detailed plan to establish a shell company and, through complex transactions, divert the assets of Vance Holdings. The ultimate goal was to transfer a considerable amount of assets to a new company in the name of Ethan and the present, Brooke here." Julian snatched the file and flipped through it page by page. The more he read, the darker his face became. Brooke's parents also rushed to look. They were not fools. Just seeing that detailed plan, they understood everything instantly. "My God, this was their true purpose," Brooke's mother exclaimed, horrified. She turned to look at her daughter. In her eyes there was no longer anger, but deep disappointment. Ethan and Brooke were frozen. They never would have imagined that their most secret plan would be revealed so abruptly. Ethan looked at me. In his eyes there was no longer terror, but hatred. "It was you. Everything was your doing," he shouted. "Yes, it was me," I said, looking him directly in the eyes without the slightest fear. "If I hadn't done it, how would everyone see your true face? The face of a scammer, of a snake willing to bite those who welcomed you, in addition to betraying your wife and your friend." I turned to Mrs. Vance. She had been observing in silence until now, but I knew a storm was brewing inside her. "Madam, allow me to introduce myself. I am Claire, Ethan's legal wife. I was the one who sent you the message tonight. I had no intention of interfering in your family's affairs. I just wanted you to know that the relationship between your daughter-in-law and my husband is not simple adultery. They are partners in crime." All the truth had come out. The play had completely ended. Ethan and Brooke could no longer deny it. He tried to play the victim, but in the end, it was I who unmasked his true nature as the executioner. The gates of hell had opened, and he had walked in on his own accord. Seeing Ethan's stunned and desperate face, I did not feel the slightest compassion. This was the end he deserved, but I knew the story wasn't over yet. Behind this betrayal was another person, a person who had aided in all these sins, and I wasn't going to let that person get away with it. If you believe this revelation was shocking enough, you are wrong. The most terrible truths are yet to come to light. Leave your predictions in the comments about who the last mysterious character might be, and don't forget to watch the next chapter. The luxurious hotel room now looked like a crime scene. Everyone was speechless at the facts I had just revealed. The asset embezzlement plan lay on the table like a solemn accusation that admitted no excuses. Ethan and Brooke stood like defendants, awaiting sentence. Their faces were pale as wax, and their former confidence and arrogance had vanished, leaving only fear and despair. Julian, after reading the documents, could no longer maintain his composure. He did not hit Ethan again but turned to his wife. In his eyes, there was no longer anger, but deep disgust and contempt. "Brooke, I never thought you were this kind of person. Not only have you betrayed me, but you tried to ruin my whole family. You don't deserve to be my wife or my family's daughter-in-law," he said with an icy voice. Brooke's parents were so ashamed they couldn't look at anyone. They just lowered their heads and apologized quietly to Mrs. Vance and her family, but Mrs. Vance didn't even look at them. Her iron gaze was now fixed on one person, me. She approached me. Her penetrating gaze seemed to pierce my soul. "Miss, you are very intelligent and brave," she said in a grave, contained voice. "Thank you for revealing the truth to us. My family is indebted to you." I just nodded slightly. I hadn't done this to be owed anything. I had done it for myself. "But I have one question," Mrs. Vance continued. "Why did you act now? With this evidence, you could have sunk your husband a long time ago." Her question was the one everyone in the room wanted to know. I took a deep breath, turned to look at Ethan, and then directed my gaze toward another woman who was trembling, hidden near the door. It was my mother-in-law, Carol. She had arrived. "I suppose Ethan called her for help, because," I began to say, my voice clearly resonating in the silence of the room, "I didn't just have to face him. I also had to face the person who covered up and consented to all these sins." I raised my hand and pointed directly at my mother-in-law. "It's her, my mother-in-law, Carol." All eyes turned back to Carol. She was stunned, her face turned pale, and she stammered, Claire, what are you saying?" I don't know anything." "You don't know anything?" I scoffed, a laugh full of bitterness. "You don't know anything? Or are you the director of this play? Always pretending to be an attentive and understanding mother-in-law, always siding with the daughter-in-law against your son, advising me to trust my husband. That men have complicated business relationships, didn't you?" I approached her, my voice growing sharper. "You knew about Ethan and Brooke's relationship a long time ago, didn't you? You didn't just know, you helped him hide it, invent excuses. You helped calm me down with sweet words. You turned me into a fool, into a puppet in the hands of you and your son. Is that so?" Carol backed away, a look of terror in her eyes. "No, it's not like that. I just wanted to protect the family's happiness." "Protect the family's happiness," I shouted. For the first time, I couldn't contain my emotions. A happiness built on lies and betrayal? You call that happiness? You conspired with your son to deceive me. You watched me suffer and agonize in my doubts with total indifference. You knew everything. Do you really have the right to be a mother?" Carol couldn't answer. She just shook her head and started crying. Ethan, seeing his mother cornered, ran to intervene. "Claire, stop. Mom is not to blame. It's all my fault. If you have anything to say it to me." "You?" I looked at him with contempt. "You have nothing left to say, do you? A coward who, until the last moment, tries to hide behind his mother. You are a perfect pair, mother and son, one cunning, the other weak. Since you created this play together, now face the ending together." I turned back to Mrs. Vance. She had been silently observing our family drama. "Madam, do you understand now why I had to come to this? I had no choice. If I hadn't saved myself, I probably would have lived the rest of my life in their lies. Mrs. Vance nodded. Her eyes were full of contempt for Carol. Understood. I didn't know such hypocritical and evil people existed in the world. She ordered her bodyguard to call the police. I am going to report these two for fraud and asset embezzlement. I will not stand idly by. Hearing the word police, mother and son completely collapsed. Carol slumped to the floor, crying uncontrollably. Ethan knelt and crawled to me, clutching my skirt. Claire, please, please forgive me. Forgive my mother and me. Just this once, I'll do whatever you want. I'll divorce you. I'll give you half my assets, but please don't call the police, please. I looked at the man kneeling at my feet, the man I once loved with all my heart. I felt no emotion in my heart. I coldly pushed his hand away. It's too late, Ethan. The price of betrayal is never cheap. I walked out without looking back. Behind me, the cries, the pleas, and the police sirens mingled, creating chaotic music that marked the end of a long play full of lies. I left the hotel and breathed deeply the fresh Manhattan night air. I had done it. I had ended the play of my life with my own hands. Everything was over, and a new life awaited me. The storm passed, leaving only ashes. The scandal at the Waldorf Astoria residences was a bomb that exploded in all media and social networks. The photos of Ethan and Brooke caught in the act, my revelation, the arrival of the police, everything was recorded by curious guests and spread instantly. The honor of two families, my former in-laws and Brooke's, completely collapsed. They went from being envied families to the laughingstock of the world. The consequences arrived faster than I had imagined. Living up to her nickname, the Iron Lady, Mrs. Vance acted decisively and ruthlessly. The next day, she filed for divorce on behalf of her son. Brooke was expelled from her in-laws' home with only what she wore. Her parents also paid a high price for their daughter's complicity. Vance Holdings terminated all business contracts with their company, and they found themselves on the brink of bankruptcy. Brooke, the young woman who lived in luxury, the fashion influencer with hundreds of thousands of followers, lost everything in an instant. Career, family, reputation, everything vanished like smoke. And the end of my family, or rather, my former in-laws, was not much different. With the irrefutable evidence I provided, and the confession of Brooke, who confessed everything to obtain a reduced sentence, Ethan and his mother were charged by the police with fraud and asset embezzlement. They tried by all means to get away with it, but faced with public opinion pressure and Mrs. Vance's firmness, no one helped them. The house we lived in, the bank accounts, all the assets in Ethan's name were frozen for the investigation. Carol, who had always pretended to be kind and distinguished, now faced justice in the twilight of her life, and Ethan's future was completely ruined. I felt no satisfaction in their downfall, only tiredness and emptiness. The war was over. I was the victor. But why did this victory taste so bitter? I had paid for this victory with 5 years of my youth, my love, and my trust. I left the apartment we lived in and returned to my parents' house. My parents did not reproach me for anything. They simply accompanied me in silence, prepared my favorite food, and took care of me meticulously. The warmth of family helped me heal my wounds. The divorce between Ethan and me was quickly processed. With the obvious evidence of infidelity and fraud, the court ruled completely in my favor. I was able to keep all my personal assets and received substantial compensation for moral damages. On the day of the trial, I encountered Ethan again. He looked like he had aged 10 years. His hair was gray, and his eyes were sunken. His former appearance as a self-assured gentleman had completely disappeared. He looked at me. In his eyes there was no longer hatred, but belated regret, but I said nothing. I walked past him as if he were a stranger. All the resentment between us had truly ended. I started a new life. I did not return to my old company. I decided to start my own communication agency. I wanted to use my experience and talent to build a new career without depending on anyone. Sarah, who had witnessed the entire process of my story, quit her job and decided to join me. I don't want to keep working for liars. I want to create a place with you where authenticity and talent are respected, she said. We started from scratch, but with constant determination and effort, our company gradually grew. The small initial successes restored the joy and confidence I had lost a long time ago. One afternoon, sitting in our new office, contemplating the vibrant city landscape, I received a call from an unknown number. "Hello, is this Claire?" The voice on the other end of the phone sounded a bit familiar. "Yes, it's me." "Sorry, who is this?" "It's Julian, Brooke's ex-husband." I was surprised. Why was he calling me? "If you have time, I would like to invite you for a coffee. I have something to tell you." I hesitated for a moment and then accepted. I was also curious to know what he wanted to tell me. We met at a quiet coffee shop. He looked tired, but his gaze was much calmer. He told me about his life after the incident. He and Brooke had officially divorced. His mother, Mrs. Vance, was very disappointed and shocked. "I called you today," he said, "to apologize and thank you." "Apologize?" I asked, surprised. "Yes, apologize," he nodded. "I want to apologize for being so stupid, for not seeing the true faces of the people around me sooner, and for causing problems for you. And to thank you. Thank you for revealing everything so bravely. If it weren't for you, I probably would still be living in a lie." He looked at me sincerely. "Claire, you are a truly special woman, strong, intelligent, and with great self-respect. Ethan did not know how to value you when he had you. That will be the biggest loss of his life." His words made me a little confused, but I felt my heart warm. For the first time, a man recognized and respected my true essence. We chatted for a long time like old friends. As we said goodbye, he said, "If you ever need help, don't hesitate to call me." I smiled and nodded. I knew one door had closed, but many others were opening. Life still had many good things waiting for me. Every woman is like a flower that can be trampled by the storm, but if she maintains the roots of her dignity and will, one day she will sprout again and bloom even more radiantly. If you agree with these words, share this story to spread the message about women's rights and the power of regeneration. Time flies, and 2 years passed in the blink of an eye. My life had entered a completely new chapter, a much brighter and more meaningful chapter. Sarah and my communication agency, which started in a small office with a few employees, had become one of the most prominent companies in the sector. We executed numerous successful campaigns for major brands, earning a solid reputation and prestige. I was no longer the Claire weak and vulnerable to love of the past. The business world had made me tough and determined, but it had not made me lose my sensitivity and delicacy as a woman. I found joy and passion in work, in creating new values. Every successful project, every compliment from a client, was a confirmation of my own worth. My relationship with Julian had also progressed unexpectedly. After that meeting at the coffee shop, we remained in contact as friends. He often asked me about my work and gave me useful advice. He also told me about his life, about the pressure of managing a major corporation after his mother retired. We found in each other the empathy and understanding of those who have gone through a wound together. Gradually, another feeling blossomed between us, from friendship, a natural and sincere feeling. He was not a romantic man like Ethan. He didn't say pretty words, but by his side, I always felt absolute calm and trust. He respected me, valued my talent, and always supported me in pursuing my dreams. This love was not as passionate and blind as the previous one, but it was more mature, profound, and solid. One autumn evening, at the same Metropolitan Loft restaurant where I once spent my anniversary night alone in tears, Julian proposed to me. There were no flowers or candles. He simply took my hand and said, "Claire, over these 2 years, you have taught me what a strong and wonderful woman is. I don't promise you a paradise. You have already created your own paradise. I only want the chance to enter that paradise and build a simple, eternal happiness with you. Will you marry me?" I cried, but this time they were tears of complete happiness. I nodded. Our wedding was intimate, only with the closest family and friends. My mother and Mrs. Vance, 2 powerful women, were now co-in-laws. They had been through the storm together, had watched their children grow, and found an affinity in each other. My life was now truly complete. I had a successful career, a husband who loved and respected me, and a family that always supported me. The painful memories of the past seemed very distant, remaining only as a costly lesson that made me value what I had now more. Sometimes I heard news of the people from the past. Ethan, after getting out of jail, could not regain his position. It is said he lives a quiet, difficult life, full of regret. Carol, I heard, had aged greatly and was weak, living alone and isolated. Brooke was rumored to have moved to another city to start over, but no one knew exactly how she was living. I no longer hated them. Everyone has to take responsibility for their own decisions. He who sows the wind reaps the whirlwind. That is the fairest law of life. One Sunday morning, Julian and I were walking together in Central Park. The morning sun was soft, and the air was fresh. He held my hand tightly. "What are you thinking about?" I was thinking. I smiled at him. How curious life is. It took one thing from me but gave me others much more valuable. That's right, I lost a fake marriage, but I regained myself and found true love and complete happiness. My story did not end with revenge, but with regeneration. I stepped out of the darkness into the light, and I know a long road full of sun and flowers awaits me. I am ready to write the next happy and brilliant chapters of my life. Dear listeners, thus concludes Claire's journey. We have traveled with her to the extremes of emotion, from full happiness in a false paradise, through extreme pain when the velvet curtain of deception was drawn back, to the euphoria of an exciting twist, and finally, the finding of peace and regeneration. As the final story ends, probably in the heart of each of us remain not only the echoes of Claire's story, but also reflections on our own lives, relationships, and the values we pursue. This story is not simply a drama about infidelity and revenge, it contains a deeper meaning. It is a costly lesson about trust, the value of self-esteem, and the extraordinary strength a woman can display when cornered. The first, and perhaps most painful lesson, is the danger of the perfect package. Ethan and his mother together created a picture that was too perfect. A husband who loved his wife devotedly, a mother-in-law as attentive as a mother. They offered Claire a paradise, and it was precisely in that sweetness that Claire lowered her guard. Doesn't that sound familiar? In life, we often crave perfection, a flawless love, a conflict-free family. And when we find something similar, we tend to ignore the strange signals, the little ripples. We blame ourselves for being too distrustful, for spoiling something good. Sudden business trips, late meetings, a casually found receipt, everything can be excused with logical reasons. But, dear listeners, feminine intuition, that vague gut feeling we often call paranoia, can sometimes be the soul's most sophisticated alarm system. Claire's story sends us a strong warning. Never ignore the voice whispering inside you. When you feel something is wrong, no matter how small, trust your instinct. Love requires trust, but trust does not mean blindness. And when the cruel truth is revealed, what can we learn from the way Claire deals with it? She did not collapse, she did not make a scene, she did not choose a vulgar method of revenge. Instead, the pain made her stronger and more rational than ever. This is the most important turning point. Instead of sinking into the role of the pitiful victim, Claire transformed into a strategist. She turned tears into weapons, pain into strength. She understood that when dealing with cunning people, emotions are just a weakness. Only reason, planning, and solid evidence were the only way to regain justice. In our lives, it is also like this. When faced with betrayal or injustice, crying and blaming ourselves is inevitable, but don't stay in that mire for too long. Allow yourselves time to grieve, but then you must stand up. Learn to transform the negative energy of anger and pain into the positive energy of action. Ask yourselves, what can I do to protect myself? What do I need to gather? Whom can I trust? And whom can I ask for help? Claire's journey demonstrates the importance of preparation. She did not act on impulse. She sought out her friend, she sought out a lawyer, she wove her net in silence, gathering evidence one by one, from the photos of infidelity, the audio files, to the elaborate financial fraud plan. She won, not by luck, but because she prepared her war carefully and meticulously. This gives us a very realistic lesson. In any conflict, from home to society, empty words and emotions are worthless. Only clear evidence, irrefutable facts, can protect your rights, especially for women. Always be aware of the family's financial situation, save important documents, have basic knowledge of the law. This is not being calculating or distrustful, it is being smart and protecting yourself. A bright and human point in this story is that Claire did not let herself be blinded by personal revenge. When she discovered that Ethan had not only cheated on her but was a professional scammer who had harmed many other people, her fight ascended to a new level. It was no longer a fight to regain her own assets, but a fight for justice. She could have chosen the easier path, reaching an agreement with Brooke to obtain evidence and end the matter quickly, but she did not. She wanted all the culprits, from the main perpetrator to the accomplices, to answer to the law. This action demonstrates a maturity and vision that go beyond personal revenge. Sometimes in life, we find ourselves in difficult situations where we have the opportunity for revenge. But will a momentary revenge bring true peace, or will it only make our soul feel heavier? Claire's story shows us another path: fight for justice. When you turn your own struggle into a fight for a greater value, you are no longer alone. And your victory will not only bring you liberation, but can also be a torch that illuminates the path and gives strength to other people in the same situation. And finally, a lesson on regeneration. 5 years of a broken marriage, love and trust collapsed. It was an enormous loss, but Claire did not let the past bury her future. She rose from the ashes stronger and more radiant. She built her own career, found a new, more valuable love, and most importantly, turned her pain into a mission. The sweetest revenge is not seeing the enemy suffer, but living a truly happy and meaningful life that they can never achieve. Claire's story seems to tell us this. There is no eternal pain. If this door closes, another will open. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. The important thing is whether we have the courage to walk through the rain. If we have the faith to wait for the Sunday, every woman has extraordinary potential within her. Never underestimate yourselves. Never think you cannot live without someone. You are your own paradise, and you are the only one who can decide the happiness of your life. Claire's story has ended, but I believe the lessons we have learned from her will resonate forever. It is a lesson about wisdom in love, strength in adversity, and the grace to find peace. Life is not always a bed of roses, but if we maintain our dignity, strive constantly, and believe in good values, we will undoubtedly find true happiness in life. Has Claire's story made you think about your own life? Have you ever had to make a difficult decision between emotion and reason? Leave your comments below to share your stories and points of view. Each of your comments is a valuable piece in creating a community where we listen and understand each other. If this story has touched your heart, hit like to spread the power of strength. Share this video with the women you love, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next profound and meaningful story. Your support is an invaluable engine for us to continue our narrative journey.